schedule for 2019.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, so moved 6-0-0. Okay. Reports, Board of Education. Sorry.
Wake up, Donna.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks. We just want to share out a couple updates. Number one, our school projects. We are still ahead of schedule with the school projects as of today. And we have moved into phase 2 at Flanders School just this past week. And then Lily B. Haynes, phase 2, is going to start next week. That's a big transition of picking at Flanders. We just moved 19 individuals, 19 teachers out of rooms into a new set of rooms. So a lot of moving. Along with that moving comes technology and having to reboot and move computers and replug. So it's an immense process we're finding. Struggled a little bit with it at Nyack Center, learned what we learned from that process and did it better at Flanders, and now next week with Haynes we'll be doing the same thing. So that's phase 1 to phase 2. We have 4 phases to go. I mean, we have 4 phases total, so we have 2 more phases to go. So other than that, the projects are moving along nicely. Budgets are still intact, and our contingency dollars, we just reported out at the board at the last meeting, we're sitting right around 1.2 million in contingency dollars left with the projects. So that's where we stand, which is we're at a good place, yeah, for right now. So next town building committee meeting is next week, and we're moving along. Budget. We have been heavily involved in our operating budget for next year and the planning that goes along with that. We just had our second budget workshop this evening. Thank you, Lisa and Ann, for taking part. And both of those, really appreciate you being part of those and hearing the work that goes into those. And now our Board of Ed has directed myself and our administrative team to go back and sharpen our pencils. It's going to be a tough year. We have some higher increases that we've run into, especially along the lines of health insurance. So we're working through those diligently. I present to the Board of Ed on January 7th, and hopefully we'll have a good number that supports our schools, but a number that obviously is palatable to a number increase that's palatable to our Board of Finance as well as our town.
Fiscally responsible.
Fiscally responsible is that's tried to be our motto. Yeah.
Sorry. But I want to thank you both for being part of it. I think that it really says a lot. It brings unity to everybody, and we learn a lot. I learned a lot about water tonight.
Sorry.
Do you want to share any details with the board in total about where you are in the draft process of the budget or not?
I think we should hold off.
Yeah, we want to do some work. We're coming in.
A lot of work.
Yeah, we're coming in fairly high right now, unfortunately. But there's some pieces of that as to reasons why. But this was kind of first out of the gate, the second workshop. So I really want to work with the Board of Ed some more, and then we'll come back to you with hopefully what will be a favorable number. So we've got some work to do.
So in the event that you get the contingency for the school fund, at the end of the project, you have $1.2 million, if you still have that money.
Every dime of that will be used.
Oh.
I can tell you that right now. Every dime. We have a whole list of items that are ready to go with those dollars. Yeah, now this is a $37 million project and 33 after state reimbursement. There's things that aren't going to get done. We have windows that weren't in the scope that we really want to get done. So if there's contingency dollars left, I would hate to leave a school with not having windows completed, and that's just one example. So I will say that hopefully we will work to use every dime of that contingency.
If any of you have interest in doing an open house or coming along with us, I'm sure that may be one of the dates that we have coming up we could share.
I actually wrote down open house.
Yeah, we're working on
ask when a good time to.
Yeah, we're working on a
building
Saturday
be.
after the holidays to try and do a Saturday. We found that the evenings sometimes are tough, but a Saturday morning, grab a cup of coffee, or we'll bring some coffee and come on over, and we'll start at Nyack Center and work our way down to see each of the 3 buildings. It's quite the transformation.
I really do, because just some of the changes that you really can see that have really benefited.
And you have a date for that, the open house?
Not yet. No, we're working on trying to find a Saturday.
Yeah, please don't make it the first
That's what I
Saturday.
should call it.
Yeah.
We've done a couple, but they're really at a 4 o'clock time slot. It's very difficult to get everybody kind of on that, so we're trying to kind of point out for a Saturday morning.
Do a nice tour. Yeah, and teachers have moved into a lot of those new spaces. That first phase is done, so we want to show it off. It's been great.
Okay, so I gotta go there again, because I do. From the $1.2 million that you still have in the contingency fund, for the things that I understand, there's a list of things that you don't think you're gonna get to. Are any of those things that can be delayed?
Well, I mean, you could delay, I guess, a handful of them, but my fear is I don't want to come back to our taxpayers and say, well, we didn't do this, and we should have, sort of thing, because we had the money to do it. Number one is windows. That's one of the biggest things. So we know that there's things that aren't going to get done with only $37 million. This is not an $80 million project, and we knew that from the start. But we plan to use all that money.
So you go down the list, the needed items, right, the things that you want, but
Yeah.
the needs come first.
Yeah, and the needs sometimes are things like health insurance, and sometimes the need is to pay the debts that are before you now.
Well, I think
So-
you have to be careful. I don't think we can't be using project money for. There's associated reimbursements that are aligned with that, and
So that was gonna be my
so-
follow-on question, is that if you said that there was potentially some contingency money, then I would ask, how is it that we can apply that to other things?
it's all part of the projects.
You can't.
Yeah, to my understanding, yeah.
No.
It's gotta be for the
So,
projects.
for example, if you have any bond issue, if you're gonna change the use of funds, you have to go through
Yeah.
a supplemental authorization. You have to follow what you were authorized to spend the money on.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a process, right? Right, I mean.
You don't have to spend it.
Right, I mean, if the list of things to still go on the contingency list where, okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna repaint something, or something that can happen 2 years from now, right? If there was 20 things at $100,000 a piece, whatever, some smaller number, whatever, $1 million divided by. So if there was a bunch of small projects that you could build into the budget over the next couple of years and take that $1 million to pay some short-term debt right now, it would be worthwhile to go and, I think, to adjust the bonding description. I just know that right now we've got some bills that are gonna hit us, and I'm just kinda, I hear the answer's no, thank you.
Yes.
Sorry?
Any other questions?
No, thank you. No.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Who's for select?
I want to thank you. That is the longest downtime I've had in a month. 2 hours, and I didn't want to offend you by closing my eyes as I was engrossed. I was certainly tuned in. Although I've heard this water thing ad nauseum. They've been working, Water and Sewer's been working on that for years. Update a few of the projects in town. I get a page of them. Costco received its final checked box. They needed a sewer assessment capacity. They received that. And then Landmark, the people that have the Oswegatchie Hills project, sued and appealed that project. They've since been given a sewer capacity the other evening by judge's order. So they will remove the appeal once the appeal time has gone by, 20 days after posting. So we expect Costco to be full on. They're already kind of doing preliminary work, but they kind of want everything in order. They're a national corporation. They do everything in order. So we expect that project to be full on, and you'd see lots of activity on that. We've had a number of sewer capacity requests. The apartments up at the Sound Apartments, our #1 taxpayer in town, want to add 120 more units. The original request was 400 units way back when it was still just a forest. And we allowed them 280 and said, come back. And they're coming back for their final 120. There'll be more townhouse type development rather than the apartment building block. That's happening. We already have an affordable housing that was approved out by the campground and Divine Wine and Honeywell that stretches behind the Honeywell building. I think that's somewhere 60, 70, 80 units that was approved. Actually, that was denied and overturned by a judge, the affordable housing. That's going in. To understand, they're going to start breaking ground on that. And another project proposed middle of the town as well, asking for sewer capacity. Henny Penny down at Four Corners is being revamped, as you saw. They're going to have softer colors and a nicer building. It's going to enhance the corner there. I just noticed yesterday that big bright yellow over, the overhang over the tanks or not over the pumps is now a white wooden thing with a small shell logo on it. It's already softer, and they're going to be building a more of a colonial building, and they've pulled it back from the. It's going to be. It's a gas station's a gas station, but you want a nice one. Is it back there? Yeah. Legislative session starts obviously soon. My work on the legislative committee at the council, CCM, thank you. It's tomorrow morning. Begins tomorrow morning, a couple-hour meeting over in New Haven. As well, I've been named the vice chair of the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments. That is going to be sworn in next Thursday for the vice chair of that. Assumingly chair the following year. East Lyme qualified for a grant. This happened a while ago. I don't know if I told you about it. To study the improvements from the highway to East Patagonia Road, Flanders Road stretch, not including the highway project and the on and off ramps. The state is handling that and is in the full process of engineering that. But Flanders Road, where it comes from 4 lanes down to 2 in front of Iliano's, the stretch around Gordon Pond where there's a dangerous curve, the fact that we can't put sidewalks in because there's no room. There really is a push for bike lanes. We're pushing for that. So this is the beginning of qualifying for DOT money to fix the road. Or to get it on the DOT, we wouldn't get the money, DOT would fix the road, but this study is the first phase of getting DOT to focus on it. What would the cost be? What would be the land taking? What's needed? And is it needed? And we know as our main conduit into our downtown Niantic area, it is needed. It's also very dangerous.
So we get a grant to do that study, or the
Yeah, it's awarded through the Southeastern Council of Governments. They get TIP money, transportation infrastructure
Improvement
program.
plan, yeah, right.
It's some kind of improvement money, and it goes through the Council of Governments. Each Council of Government gets a certain portion. We qualified. We put a request in, and we won out of all the 22 towns in the Council of Government. This is an important roadway. It needs improvement for pedestrian and for bicycles as well as that dangerous curve. And we've had another fatal accident over there, and we have one every 2 years. We had a motorcycle about 3 or 4 years
Yeah, I
ago
remember.
as well. Horrible. So that needs to happen. It's there's a lot of neighborhoods that need to be connected in that area. That pedestrians would benefit greatly if there was a sidewalk there, with our middle school there and neighborhoods along the side, on the other side of Gordon Pond. The state has a lot of projects planned, including, of course, Exit 74 and engineering and studies for the land taking around Exit 74. It's still continuing. There's a new governor coming in. I don't know about the DOT commissioner, but it's still high priority. The Flanders Bridge, Exit 74 bridge, was rated the worst bridge in Connecticut. You saw them doing some maintenance work if you traveled through there recently. They were going in there just to shore it up. It was that bad. So they were digging through and fixing the rebar in there and maintaining it. I was concerned that if you maintain it too nicely, they're not going to fix the bridge. The bridge needs to be redone anyway. So it's still on target. They have to do that bridge before any other development at Costco happens. Costco can happen, but the 2/3 of the development has to happen after the bridge. and the Flanders Road needs to be widened. By the way, that area will receive bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides, which would be a benefit for anybody in the Flanders area. The bridge at the end of Lover's Lane, between Heritage Road and Lover's Lane, it's an unnamed brook, and you would think, why? But yes, that bridge needs to be redone. That they're talking about shutting the road down
On
for a
Route 1?
week.
You're talking
It's on Route
between
1.
Lover's Lane okay, so Route
Yeah,
1.
Route 1,
That'd be
kind of
huge.
like, it's much simpler than the Ron's Gun Bridge, which took 2 years, on schedule, but 2 years. But we're in discussions on how that's going to proceed. They wanted to shut the bridge down for 2 weeks. We can't shut down Route 1 for 2 weeks with school buses and emergency vehicles, as well as all the transient traffic. And by the way, they can't do this in the middle of the winter. It has to happen in September and October, and our traffic does not go down. In fact, it goes up during that tourist season. So we're working with the state on how we can best implement that. The bridge over 4 Mile River, you heard about that. They're going to be rebuilding. That's on the East Lyme, Old Lyme line. They're bringing up the road bed 5 feet to remove the bridge from a flooding area to that bridge being adequate for flow from the 4 Mile River. Actually, both sides of the ocean gets flooded and moves inland. It would cover that as well. It would be instead of a bridge with culverts, it would be an arched bridge. It would allow proper flow through there. Also, the Niantic River Bridge is being rebuilt and repainted. The mechanisms that open up the bridge are 25 years old. It's also the computer that does all that. There's no parts for anymore. And if, remember a year or two ago, it got stuck up there for a long period of time. They scrambled and got parts, but that whole mechanism needs to be changed. So that road will be closed for portions of time, and the detour will go up and around. So we're trying to coordinate all these projects, all these state projects. All good though. Comcast is coming to town. I don't know if you heard that. Comcast. We'll have another choice for cable and internet service. It's controlled by the state. We don't get a say in this. We also don't get tax money in this. Board of Finance. They don't string on poles. They go underground when they wire up a neighborhood. That has some negative implications. They go right through a driveway. They dig up a driveway, and they'll cold patch it. But if you just did your driveway and a well, and this is a state thing. They also, I've heard, because they've gone into Waterford in parts already, they might hit, they'll go through front lawns, edges, near the curb. But if you have some sprinkler systems there, you might
Do they
have
notify?
to have conversations with Comcast.
They notify residents, I assume,
Yes,
first.
yes, as they're coming through, yeah. But it is kind of intrusive, and people will be told about that. We've entered into agreement for a new animal control facility. Again, I'm speaking to the Board of Finance. It's not going to cost the taxpayers of East Lyme a dime. That cost is borne by first of all, we had a lot of donations over the years. You heard about all that, and what a controversy. And they were collecting money, but they didn't have a plan. And then that $200,000 been sitting out there. And at one point, there was talk about going to Corrigan to build it there. And of course, there was an uproar. I want my money back. We're going to combine our animal control facility, regionalize it with New London's. New London's facilities at Bates Woods, right off of Clark Lane. So it's right on the New London Waterford border. It's a great facility. We're going to put a wing or a pod off of one area of that facility, so we'll share the administrative area. We won't share animal control. We'll keep that separate. New London will have their own thing, and Waterford and East Lyme will continue, at least for now. But we'll control and regionalize the facility. So the care of the animals will be certainly a big upgrade. Where they were is, if you don't know anything, it was horrible. It was a shack and often unheated, and the animals weren't cared for to the standards they should be, especially in modern day. The remaining amount of costs will be borne by Waterford. Our agreement with Waterford is they control the facility and have to pay for the facility. We pay for the vehicle and the maintenance of the vehicle and all that. So we will continue with that relationship with Waterford. Miracle League field, just to keep you up to date on that, has raised almost $300,000. They had a successful fundraising campaign. So they're well on their way, well past the midway point. They'll begin planning the construction this spring. I don't know if they'll start this spring, but they're going to get close at this point.
So you seem to say, so I get on that same subject, you seem to say in the past that you thought that once they crossed that midway
Yeah.
mark, there'd be a whole bunch of organizations that would be chomping at the bit to give them the second half?
I'm not the expert in this. I've been told that that's typical, that the big sharks, the big whales, I guess it's whales, not sharks, they come in after the halfway point. You're a project that's going to happen now, so you can qualify for the
I've
big.
heard the same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. We'll see that maybe an uptick, and it's gotten a little bit more visibility throughout the region, not just in our town as well. I've been pushing it at the Council of Governments. It's 22 towns. Listen, Eastern Connecticut's going to benefit from this. They'll have to come to East Lyme, but the families are throughout the town, throughout the region, and more and more towns are helping out with that. More and more Rotary clubs and fundraisers, et cetera, being focused on that. It's a good thing. And more of those ball players that stepped up during this this last thing we had at Mohegan Sun will continue to stay focused on it. They continue to support it. I'm working with historic properties to work more and more together. We're losing more and more citizens that used to serve on these commissions. You see the work output from some of these commissions being lowered a little bit because there's not as many people that had first initially volunteered to say, I'm going to go fix that house, or I'm going to go fundraise, and there is a push to bring everybody together under an umbrella. It's the long-term goal. I think we're heading in that direction. We have a gem of a lady, Barbara Lowe Johnson, who's taken hold of the Historic Properties Organization, and is a pleasure to work with. And she has both feet on the ground. It's a little less pie in the sky, a little bit more reality, and God bless them all. And last, if you've been reading the paper, the aquaculture issue in the Niantic River, and some people think that we should never have aquaculture cages out there and experiment and all that. And we did. Wellsco is an organization that is in our town. We have 4 members of our community, 4 members of Waterford. It's a Waterford East Lyme Shellfish Commission, and it's a state agency, or a chartered agency. It's not a town agency. We do give them money. But it's control. Their charter and their rules come from the state, and we had our attorneys finally look at it and say, you know what, they're in charge of licensing. They're responsible for the taking of shellfish from the river, not the growing of shellfish, not leasing land, and it's been also very difficult to deal with them because we're dealing with 2 municipalities that run their governments differently. So we pulled back on Wellsco. We're probably going to give it back over to the Harbor Management, which is a town agency, which mirrors the Harbor Management over in Waterford. And we're going to get a little bit control on that. But all these people do good work, but we have to do it legally in the right way. So we're getting our handle on that. So that's what I did this week. And a few other things. And obviously, there's a proposal out there, and you're going to get that proposal after the first of the year. We're going to have a schedule on when we propose to bring details to you on the public safety building, and a proposal of a schedule. But certainly have to have things wrapped up by mid-March, or not. So that's that. And we can go back to the cheap seats if you want.
Questions for the first selectman?
Do you have any timeline? You talk about all these bridges, but I forget the name of the river. Not the no-name river. The one on 161 to the west of the Honeywell building.
Mm.
What's the timeline?
That
for
would be
Is
this
it
summer. Would be the following.
4 Mile?
The 4 Mile.
Yeah, 4
I'm
Mile
sorry,
would be the
yeah.
following summer.
Following summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're still working out. They initially came to us and said, no, we're just going to shut it down for 6 months, and 6 months means a year, And we said, Major evacuation point, when the highway is shut down, that is the highway. That is people coming home, but also going through. And by the way, if the state puts the tolls up, that will have trucks coming down there all the time, trying to avoid 2 or 3 tolls
They can do
between
that
here and
bridge
Old
without
Lyme.
shutting it down. It's just
Yeah,
they don't
they're
want
we're gonna, but because they're raising the land around it, it's a major project. It's not just a knock and insert. The one at Lover's Lane, they're talking about one of those weekend overnight things that
Right.
really last more than
Yeah.
like a week, but still quick.
Right.
Like they did an old Oil Mill Road. I think they did that bridge very quickly.
Yeah.
So that'll be a couple summers. Niantic River is this summer. Lover's Lane is this coming fall, so 11 months from now. Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
What others?
I have a question. So, Mark, do you have a handle on the projected tax revenue that we will receive from the Costco project?
A conservative guess of $500,000.
Okay, and when do we expect that to be in our coffers, if you will? I mean, when is it gonna be? 'Cause we're looking for
And it
revenue.
probably has a better handle on when we bill and all that stuff, but and Diane, our assessor, would figure out when we can start, proposed building, but they're planning on
roughly.
being open 11 months from now.
Okay.
11
that's
months from now.
November of 19,
Yes.
roughly.
Yes. They want to be
So-
open before Christmas. And I don't know if that schedule slipped because they really wanted to be in the ground already moving dirt. So would it
Yeah, I
be
know.
January? Would it be March? But
But, okay, so say they make their schedule. When will we start getting money from them? The following July, a prorated?
If, it all depends on how much is done as of
October
construction
1st.
as of 10/1/19.
Oh,
So then, the 10/1/19
Okay.
grant list is what is used for.
so nothing.
that's
the
that.
7/1/20.
They might be a month
not
away from
You're
opening.
saying okay, I got you.
So, in the
I wasn't
projected
thinking.
opening, if they're 80% and they're still on
Okay.
target, it will be 80-90% of the full build out. That snapshot of 10/1 is always the trigger, right? It's
So 500,000.
yeah.
How about the affordable housing project that's been approved? What are you expecting to get from that?
We haven't seen the final site plan because they're moving things around. That will be a couple of years.
But tax revenue.
I don't know. I don't
Don't
know
have
because
it?
I don't know
Okay.
the quality of workmanship that would be going into that. I would suspect that we're talking about the sound departments and they're ready to go. They have site plan. I have it on my desk.
Okay.
120. They already have 280 up there.
Right? You said
So
they're
let's
adding
call
120.
it. That's 2/3, so a third, and they're paying 600,000 now. So 300,000.
Another 300.
I'm just.
I know.
Yeah,
I-
but it is 3 or 4.
Okay, and when are they expected to be complete?
If they receive approvals during this winter, they'll be in the ground in spring. So I don't know what that snapshot will look like in October, but they're desperate to get housing units up. So if they're 50% done in October,
So that has potential to put a smile
Yeah.
on our faces a
Yeah.
little bit.
there's grand list growth coming into this town. I mean, there's
What's-
also going to be
what's going on-
pressure.
What's going on in Midway Mall? There's a new owner there. Do we have
Yeah,
plans?
oh, I wrote that down. There's 2 new owners of significance, Midway Mall. What is the other one? I don't know, there's another one. The big deal.
Who?
UBS changed hands. It's Riverhead Building Supply
Mhm.
and Boats Inc. And they're talking about expansion down here on the river. At some point, they're talking about more marina space and
Is-
such.
So for
But
Midway
Midway.
Mall, are there plans to expand, knock that down, do anything? I'm looking for tax dollars. I'm just saying, is there anything more than we can?
Shaking the pockets, huh?
Well,
I think he's
Yeah.
looking at an upgrade, and I think an upgrade equals an assessed value upgrade. But and the company is kind of committed to upgrading that facility. I don't know if it's going to be dramatic enough to
Yeah.
find hundreds of thousands of dollars. At one point, we were looking at a tear down. Bring the road.
Yes.
Do you remember that? So we're going to bring the building up to the road, have underground
Awesome.
parking to the back.
Never going.
It was grand in thought,
It's
but
just smart growth. Just bring the, I don't mean smart, little s.
Yeah,
I mean,
it
yes,
takes
right.
it takes
Move
someone
up
with
to the road.
vision and money and thinking he's gonna get the rent to knock it down and rebuild it and do that. That was proposed to be an affordable housing district. And way back when
Yeah.
there's affordable housing and then there's a new type of affordable housing where if you declared the units, the state was gonna pay you money per unit.
Yeah, I think that's in our
That
POCD.
never happened.
In our POCD, that whole area
Yeah.
is in the affordable zone,
Yeah,
as I
and we
recall.
did that because the state said, well, we'll give you $1,000 per unit, then when it gets built, we'll give you another 5,000, and they didn't pay a dime to anybody. It was, an unfunded, great idea.
Affordable housing. You only have to have, is it still the same number, 30%?
30%. 30%, and it goes for 20 or 30 years. 30% like quality, you can't make the 30%
have to
cheaper.
be affordable, and the rest you can
Yeah.
do
Right.
it.
And it's
Market
deeded,
housing.
it's, yeah.
Are we going after any other revenue? Are we going after any other business to bring to town? Are we actively pursuing any?
Well, we
other-
don't have an EDC and we don't go to trade shows. We kind of leave that up to our developers. I know Conover had lots of interest when Costco got signed. There's lots of interest to
Yeah.
the back, to the second portion, but then they got word from the DOT or OSTA, they call it now, Office of State Traffic, that you can't build phase two, 2/3 of that until the
95.
bridge is done.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm just asking in general, right? Because we're on the ropes constantly. It never gets better. Are we actively going out? And if we're not, is that something that you would be willing to consider to devote some resources to going out and trying to procure some revenue for the town? Because the expenses just never go away. with
I
this.
think your growth is, it's nickels and dimes all over the place. It's not nickels and dimes, it's a lot of money. But you got 12 or 16 units on Hope Street that's just about to get their COs. You got the Park Street,
Yeah.
Park Place.
Yeah, I know.
Is there 80 units up on the hill there that he's building one thing at a time? Green Valley,
Right,
very
but
controversial. There's 26 homes going in there, so
Right,
I
but-
think there's a
but
lot
the
of that
difference
grand.
between those, yes, I
Yeah.
hear what you're saying. The difference between those are developers are coming to town
Yeah.
to build. I'm talking about us going out and seeking.
No, we don't market our town in an economic development way. We're kind of out of space, Lisa. I mean, if we had an
There's
industrial
some
park
vacant
like,
spots, right?
well, Triumph is under a letter of intent. There's somebody who's looking at Triumph, but that's
Yeah.
also a dirty property, and they're in the process of trying to clean that up. It's right on our aquifer. There's some issues there. There's not a lot of vacant space in our commercial zones are very tight. We're not
Commercial
Waterford.
has been, I understand.
So on the not so positive side, I saw Bob's
Yeah.
was for sale.
For sale now?
When I was looking
Yeah.
at office buildings, one of the buildings
Yeah.
that I saw for sale was
Right.
Bob's. Did you hear that they were moving, or?
They're building where Chuck E. Cheese was.
Oh,
You'll see some tractors
yeah,
rolling
yeah,
over there next time you're
So
over
we're
there
gonna
next
lose
to
some tax revenue there.
next to Chili's.
How much are we
They're going to
losing?
build a big thing like Jordan's did down at in New Haven. They need the big splash on the highway, and they think it's better there. I think they're better where they are. They should have rebuilt. There's some land there.
what's the Harley Davidson moved in back in there?
Mike's famous.
Mike's Famous is gonna.
Yeah, I don't know who
That
owns it
would
now.
be
I don't know
nice.
if Mike still owns it. And I thought originally Mike still owned it, and Bob's was paying rent to Mike's, and then I think that all changed. Someone will go there. That's highway frontage. It's good highway frontage, and it's been successful retail. I think Bob's just needs something bigger to compete with the.
Can you say what
Competition.
type of business is looking at Triumph? Can you say what kind of business?
I
is
don't
looking at
know.
Triumph? Oh.
I don't know. I know there's a letter of intent. So I don't know if that's all I heard. Because of course we were part of the discussion about municipal facility. It's 60,000 square feet. It's a big monster of a building.
It's kind of old then.
Oh yeah, it needs a lot of work.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, I do. Concerning the property on, what is it, 277 West Main Street? Why is Honeywell leaving? Where are they going?
That building at one time had 125 or 150. It was big enough for 150 employees. They're down to 25. They have a facility that's half empty, not only here, more than half empty, but in Northford, Connecticut. We had heard rumors 2 years ago they were moving. They denied. We discussed anyway, what if and how about, and what if we did this, and they said, no, we'll talk, and it went back and forth, and it had to go all the way through the corporate office, and eventually they made their decision, and it was simultaneous. So we're going to move out, and we're going to accept your offer, and they're moving out. We thought at one point they would move out and stay in town and just rent space, because a lot of their employees are from this area. We know of 3 places they were looking at. We know for a fact they were scoping out a place in Saybrook, and a place in East Lyme, and another place that I forget. I'd be making it up. But
they're
they
moving
decided
those
to go to a
employees to
corporate facility that's already
Northford?
built and is already furnished. So they're leaving the furniture in their spot where they are. In the East Lyme spot, they're leaving that furniture behind for the next tenant.
Whoever that might be.
Whoever that might be. Any other questions?
Another day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Next agenda item, Director of Finance. It's you.
Good evening. Your reports were included in your packets. I'll start first by asking if anyone has any questions.
So I have a general question, and I kind of feel like I should know this, but I just don't.
It's okay.
Thank you for that. I felt good. So on the revenue account sheet, help me understand just a couple things. We're 194%, I'm on the second page, right up 5th or something from the bottom. It's not a ton of money, but it's a chunk. We're 194% over budget for the insurance reimbursements. First of all, what are they?
So our liability and workers' comp carrier, Kerma, they have been awarding, they do like a bone or a reimbursement to the cities and towns that have
Oh,
that have the policies with them. And so I based it on when we did the budget. I used the prior year amount that we received, and we did receive more. So
so there's a bunch of accounts that are over, which is nice. What do we do with that money in terms of, I'm just trying to think about, does it go back in?
So that becomes a part of operating surplus. So
Okay.
anything that's on the positive side, then that would go into our fund balance at the end of the year.
So operating surplus gets swept into fund balance?
That's correct,
Okay.
yes.
I knew that. I was just seeing if you knew that. So what's our fund balance right now?
So from at the end of last fiscal year, the unaudited estimate is $5.2 million. So it went up, between. Pardon?
What do we add in? What do we think we're going to be adding?
Yeah, about $489,000 from the prior
So I'll
year.
say half a million.
I'm sorry, say that
Yeah.
again?
About $500,000. So as you know, last fiscal year, when it took so long for the state budget to get adopted, both the town and, we figured out what our estimated shortfall would be if, depending on what the state ended up doing. And so both the town and the Board of Ed, we got together and we figured out what our, fair shares were, and we put budget freezes on a lot of our budgets. And so at the end of the year, when I went and looked at the town side, and the same on the Board of Ed, we had a little more frozen than we had remembered because we encumbered the funds, and so that helped us at the end of the year be able to grow it, which we had been struggling, and it had been going down a little bit, so I was pleased to see that we would have the increase.
So we're at 5.7.
5.2.
Okay, but we're gonna be at 5 point.
No, that includes
No, I
No.
thought I just heard you say currently our operating surplus, maybe I didn't hear you right.
Right, with what we added to it at the end of last year, it would be 5.2 million.
What we added last year, the
Correct.
total is now 5.2.
Correct.
Okay, and then what's the magic number for where the feds and all not the feds, but the agencies like us to be? It's what, some percent of our overall operating
Well,
budget? What is that?
so, in our category, they would really like us to be more like 15%. So we're more at the low end for the category that we're in.
And where are we now, percent-wise?
8.5-ish.
So we're at 8.5%. They really want us to be at 15.
Correct,
We have 5.2 million in our fund balance.
correct.
Okay. And all the extras on here, we sweep into the fund balance.
Right, so
Special.
I did look at, like at the end of November, I looked at, okay, this is where we are now, and I did an estimate as to where I think we might be in June of 19. And it's looking like, right now at this point in time, that we wouldn't use any fund balance. So in other words, the revenues that we were gonna, receive would get us at breaking even.
Are you concerned about our fund balance being only 8.5% when it's recommended to be 15%? Does that concern you?
Well, for it to be, that would be at the top of that grade. Yes.
Okay, but no,
I mean-
I wanna understand from our director of finance, because I don't know. I mean, in the real world, is this something that causes you concern, or are you
Well,
thinking,
of
no, it's
course
okay?
no, of course it does, because at the end of the year, come June 30th, before the tax dollars start coming in, that's our cash flow. And we have bond payments that are due in mid-July. So, and even though the taxes are due like the 1st of July, a very high percent of them don't come, the dollars don't come in until the last week of the month. So, it's a concern, it's a struggle. It would be nice if we could get it up, closer to maybe 10%,
Mhm.
but we're not gonna do that all at in one time.
Is it an appropriate strategy? Is it appropriate to create a strategy to get to 10%? Because I don't know that we're actively working toward an
So,
appropriate fund balance. I don't think we are. We just kind of sweep it in and this is the total. It's not a
one
goal that I'm aware of.
thing that we could do is we could not apply any fund balance to a subsequent year budget, and then in addition to that, we could include budgeting to increase our fund balance. So one of the budget, one of the budget line items could be to increase fund balance.
So would you consider,
We've done that in past years. We've
yeah, but we're not
included
doing it right now. I think it would be good to, well, I'm not saying we're gonna get there, but,
Had a budget line item.
no, we haven't. I don't think we have.
Committed $300,000.
Yeah, but we haven't worked towards it.
This year
Mhm.
to go in. We sweep at the end of the year. We don't go to Staples and spend the last dime, the last buck, like, companies would. We sweep.
For many
to
years,
cover.
it was $400,000 or $500,000 a
Yeah.
year for several years.
Yes.
We weren't that lucky last year.
Yeah, 500.
So when we talk.
But what, I thought we had, when was it that we had only 200?
Maybe 2 years ago.
2 years
Yeah.
ago? Pretty
We have
recent,
bigger
so
budgets now, too.
Wait,
we
200
do,
to
we do.
sweep in or 200 in the
to
whole fund?
sweep in.
Oh,
See, in the past, when, our budgets are getting leaner every year.
Right, right.
And so as the budgets have become leaner, there isn't, the surplus at the end of the year has been,
Right.
has decreased. And
But-
that's, one of the issues that we have struggled with.
So what you're saying is that 500,000 sweep in just this past year was a result of the freeze that you put on the budget, in large part.
Yes.
So it's interesting that you brought this up, Lisa, because you know how I always ask for balance sheets or a trial balance on some of these accounts?
yeah, I've heard you ask for that.
This is one that I really think we need to monitor closely. So I just came up with a little template for you, Anna, and I would really, really appreciate it if we could have a report every month in our packet identifying what the fund balance is. So if you were to start on January or July 1st with an amount, and then track for us what's going in and what's going out, and this little shaded gray area down here would be what your projection is for how we're going to end up at the, and it's fascinating that you just said you took a look at November about how you thought we would end up at the end of this year. And that's what I was going to ask you to do, is maybe you could forecast for us where you think we're going to end up by the end of the year. So just a simple, like, trial balance type of report on the fund balance would be very helpful for me to so
So
we're
the
not
goal is-
constantly asking what's in the fund balance, what's in the fund balance.
Yeah, that would
So
be.
I don't know if you could get this from your computer system or if it's an Excel spreadsheet, but to me, it's kind of simple to, I don't think we have a lot of activity in and out of the fund balance. Well,
Well, so-
no, there was in October, an approval we made for $543,000, an appropriation to come out of the fund balance. So
What was that for?
for this judgment payment
Oh,
for the
yeah.
Board of Ed.
That didn't come out of fund
I know it
balance.
didn't come out, but it's projected that we will need to take it out.
Yeah,
We
so-
appropriated those funds in case we need them. And it was determined that it would come from the fund balance.
And we might need another 315.
See, those funds,
Yeah.
okay, so at the end of, for 6/30/17, the Board of Ed still had approximately $193,000 set aside in encumbrances. They were holding that for, at some point when that sped lawsuit gets, the judgment happens. And then for 6/30/18, they had an additional amount of funds that they set aside in an encumbrance. And so, in speaking with the Board of Ed Finance Director, we discussed coming before the boards to just take that money and put it in a committed portion of fund balance. So that's, we have committed,
You lockboxed it.
and then we have undesignated, and then there's the third portion would be assigned, which is what, like, part of that would be the $675,000 that we used from a prior year to balance, this year's budget.
Yeah, I think that's in our minutes, I believe, like the source of that sped designated money.
Right.
So I didn't think it was coming
That's
from
correct.
fund balance, but
Well, that's what it says, for a total amount of $543 in fund balance, specifically for the payment of the judgment.
it was from the remaining
Right,
two
so I wasn't,
seasons, right,
right.
okay, of
right,
Board
but
of
that
Ed.
money got put aside for that specific purpose, and we're holding it in the savings account, right?
But there's three components of fund balance, so
Yes.
it's not, so are you asking for undesignated fund balance, or are you asking for,
Right,
like, the three categories
Well,
of
you
fund
could
balance?
put on the note side here whether that appropriation is undesignated or allocated, right? I mean, you could let us know. Because the bottom line is we might have to pull the funds from this fund balance, right? So we should know what our liability is at any point in time, or our projected liability.
Why don't you give me your template, I'll take a look at it and see what I can come up with our information.
Okay, there you go.
You know why that's kind of a good thing, though? I don't always remember this number. It just, I mean, you
Right,
have
we're
it off
always
the tip of your
asking.
tongue.
I mean,
just-
but it seemed to me that maybe there's two different thoughts going on, that there's the general unassigned fund balance that we have, which is, the 5.2 million at this point. And then we always have fund balances in every fund that you have. I mean, it's just the nature of it. Right,
Yeah.
whatever it is. So
Right.
there might be a way that for your request that there are certain of these funds and certain of these that you would like to see the balance of?
I would like to see the balance of the funds basically that we're being asked to appropriate in and out of. So for example, the CNRE fund would be another one
Okay.
that I would like
Sure.
to have tracked.
So it'd be a
Because every
cumulative.
time that I want to know what the fund balance is, it seems like I have to dig through my auditor reports. And if I wanted to see what the trend from, say, 2014 to 15 to 16, whatever, I have to go back and look at those auditor reports to get the numbers. There's no other way for me to figure that out except to ask you every time or do the digging. So it'd be nice to have a report, just like we get the financials every month. What is our undesignated fund balance? The important ones, CNRE would be a good one.
So that report that you're working on for the 10-year look ahead, maybe the fund balance would be one of your line items in there?
That's, I mean, I think, yeah, so that would, I'd have to add that in if we were gonna, if that's something that the board wants to consider.
Because your fund balance is kind of fluid, and it's a culmination of all the different funds and what's the given plus and minus at any point in time.
So like what your fund balance is, it's just the cumulative effect of your operating results.
Yeah. But see, I think that's something that as a board, we should have right in the, on our little blotters, if you will, so to speak, right? So if anybody asks me, what's your fund balance and what, what percent are you of your budget? I couldn't tell them unless I